G'day everyone, we're up to number 8 now in the top 20 albums of all time. And where do you start with this one? There is no doubt my number 8 is absolutely far and away the most commercially successful album in this list. You might already have guessed what it is. Absolutely a rock record. This came to define a generation, this album, and understandable when you have a listen to it, as so many of us do so repeatedly, even a good 29 years after its release. If you haven't worked it out by now, I'm talking about Nirvana and Nevermind. 1991 it was released in September. There's not many records or bands that come to define a generational movement. In fact, I reckon the history of rock, you've arguably got 3. You've got the start of rock and roll back in the mid-50s. You've got, I guess, the Beatles, throw them in there in, 63 or whatever. You've got the punk revolution of 76, 77 in England with the Sex Pistols and a host of other bands. And then you've got grunge. And these guys, they weren't the first, but they were the band that certainly pushed grunge and the whole Seattle music scene into the foreground of world attention. It was like a perfect storm, really. I think a number of things happened on this front. One being, very importantly, that rock music had got very tired and old. I think everyone had had enough of hair metal and a lot of those sort of overproduced, overblown bands by this stage, and there was a real sort of crying out for back to basics, and these guys just hit the sweet spot in that regard. Personally, I remember a colleague of mine on the Age, Sean Carney, who wrote a lot of music reviews and whose opinion I really respected. He saw me one day and just said, "You have got to listen to this record." I hadn't heard of him at that stage. Coincidentally, that very same night I went home, and it was a Friday night, I think, and the clip for Smells Like Teen Spirit came on Rage, and like everyone else, I just went, wow, what a massive smack you over the head 3.5 minutes of rock music that is. Went out and bought the album and just wasn't disappointed. Not a dud track on this album. Pretty famous track lineup. Smells Like Teen Spirit kicks it off. In Bloom, fantastic song. Great film clip for that too. Come As You Are, another very, very well-known song. Breed, which is just a million miles a minute. Lithium, those first 5 tracks, things ease up a bit with Polly. But then on the second side, if you've got an LP, Territorial Pissings is pretty full on, a bit of a wall of noise. Drain You, Lounge Act, Stay Away, On a Plane. Something in the Way is the quiet one to finish it off, but it's just one of those records that picks you up by the scruff of the neck, shakes you around a bit and refuses to let go until you emerge from the end of it completely exhausted in a very pleasant way. It's just rock music at its finest, really. It took sort of elements of punk, I guess, with the tempo, elements of heavy metal, elements of more sort of commercially friendly American rock. And that was the thing about Nirvana too. They explored some sort of offbeat topics, but a very melodic band for all that heaviness. And this also is a triumph of production in my view. Their first album, Bleach, is great too, but it's a totally different sounding album. Very, it was done on the cheap and quite sort of muddy production and a dirty sort of sound. By this stage, they'd replaced their drummer. Dave Grohl had joined the band, one of the hardest hitting drummers music's ever seen. They got Butch Vig to produce this album, and he just got the perfect mix, I think, in that it's hard and heavy, and yet it's a very, very clean sounding record. And this record also epitomises that sort of quiet, loud dynamic that works so well for so much of the music that emerged in this period. And the songs are great, Smells Like Teen Spirit is an anthem. Come As You Are, more a slower tempo, but quite a brooding, still haunting sort of song. In Bloom, great sort of mid-tempo, sing-songy type chorus. They just ticked all the boxes, I think, for both commercial and critical success. Needless to say, the extent of that success amazed everyone, none the least the band themselves. And obviously an ongoing theme from that moment on was their struggle in coping with that. And tragically, Kurt Cobain couldn't cope with that and, very sadly ended up suiciding in 1994 at the age of only 27. Chris Novoselic is really sort of, for all intents and purposes, bowed out of mainstream music a long time ago. And Dave Grohl, of course, has gone on to a very, very long and successful career with the Foo Fighters, another great band as well. Probably, though, not as interesting a band as Nirvana, and I think that's where Cobain really gave these guys their edge, just the lyrical themes explored, his sense of melody. Some people who are fans of the Beatles would laugh at me saying this, but there's something quite Beatlesy, Beatle-ish about some of these songs, I think. Just beautifully constructed pop songs, but played with a hard rock sensibility. I could talk about this record for hours because there are so many elements to it and so many things on it which were well done. Their follow-up to this, In Utero, certainly not as accessible, and that was almost a deliberate ploy on their part to go for something that wasn't going to be that, jumped on by as big a bandwagon of people. Still a great album, and I like it a lot, but nothing is as instantly accessible in their catalogue as this record. And to be honest, nothing most rock bands have ever produced has been as instantly accessible as this record. Like I said, the times were perfect for this band. This record was perfect for the times. One of the best produced records in history. Just hangs together in so many ways. Never get tired of playing it. And that's why, a good 30, 40 years from now, you're going to be hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit and Come As You Are and all those songs. Stay Away, On a Plane, Lithium. You're still going to be hearing those songs because they are great songs and, in this case, brilliantly recorded. Is there a person on the planet that hasn't heard this album? Well, if you are, here's your chance to check it out. I can guarantee you won't be disappointed. So number 8 in my top 20 countdown, one of the biggest selling, 30 million sales at last count. 30 million people, can't be wrong. Do yourself a favour, as Molly would say, check this out. Smells Like Teen Spirit, one of the biggest songs and best known songs of all time. Nevermind is the album and the band is Nirvana. I'll see you back here for number 7.